Welcome to the DealerRefresh Roundtable, where we explore the hottest topics in automotive retail to help those in the industry take action, innovate, and improve. The DealerRefresh Roundtable, in the forums and on the lot.
Thanks to our sponsor, Cars.com. Whether consumers are shopping online or on the lot, Cars.com creates connections that fuel growth.
Folks, welcome to the DealerRefresh Roundtable, where we explore the hottest, most important topics so that those in the auto industry can take action, innovate, and improve. I'm Ryan Girardi, and welcoming back here is Jeff Kirshner and Ed Brooks and Bill Playford. Good to see you guys here again. Being christened today is Mr. Chris K. Leslie from Las Vegas.
Hi.
How's it going?
Hi.
As I mentioned, Ed's, been here. This is your third, I think, appearance here on the round table. You were on the first two, I believe, just not the last one, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I think so.
And in that first session, we really kicked things off heavily around the conversation of attribution. And the reason everybody here today, Chris and Bill and Ed, is just because as we talk about attribution, it's such an elusive topic in this space. You have the dealership's perspective, you have the website provider's perspective, you have consultants, you have third-party aggregators and lead providers, and even the roles of the third-party providers out there. Those roles are changing, and so it's an exciting topic, and we have some great fun debates about it, and we have some good memes. Ed, what's the meme behind you?
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
That was Kevin Fry, his write-up about Digital Dealer after sitting in on the session that you guys had. So Chris was talking about attribution. Steve Stauning was talking about attribution. And I think Kevin Fry had a little bit of a different take on attribution compared to Chris and Steve.
So as I see the quote in there, Kevin says, our industry is much better than this. And he's referring to both Chris and Steve on the panel, who both really, I think, took a step out and said that, last touch attribution is right now a more reliable means of attributing marketing dollars. Chris, what say you on that?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. No, I'm kidding. So, let me explain a little bit why I said what I said. And I did say that last touch attribution, or, whatever, is one of the easier ways to measure things right now. Is because there's so many different versions of what a multi-touch attribution model looks like, first of all, right? And then secondarily, when I do things like if I spend money on digital advertising, let's say, right? So I'm buying AdWords, I'm buying, banners, I'm doing all this like digital advertising to drive traffic to my website. If somebody fills out a form or makes a phone call from my website, then that comes across into the CRM. That's where that contact initiated. You might be able to say, like, at a certain point when you go to your web analytics and say, okay, well, where did all of this traffic come from the amount of money that I'm spending? And I think you've talked about this earlier, where it's sales attribution, marketing attribution, the difference there. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's sales attribution versus marketing attribution as much as saying, okay, well, I wanted to spend this amount of money to drive more traffic to my website, to fill out forms and to make phone calls, and they did. Okay, so now I can go to my website analytics and see who contributed to that. Does that make sense? So it's not last click. I mean, it is last click in the sense that did they call from, say, my website or from my, or did they call from the site, or did they fill out a form from the site, right? Because that's exactly what happened. Nothing, they didn't fill out a form on AutoBytel's site and it came in through my web or my CRM as like a website form or a website lead. You know what I'm saying?
So, Bill, I'm going to turn to you on this because as I hear Chris talk, the thing that I think about that comes to mind when Chris is talking is, why do we need to know this? It's kind of a rhetorical question, but maybe you can speak to it. Why do we even need to think about who gets credit for what? The only thing I would add to what Chris said is, when people say who gets credit for the sale, I think that's the wrong question. When we're talking marketing, it's about where do I put my ad dollars? So maybe you could speak to why do we need to have this conversation about attribution?
Right. I think it has everything to do with, I mean, just to your point, everything to do with sort of how to deploy your advertising dollars, assuming that you're going to do something with it. I think we make a lot of assumptions in this business that we have to do these types of things. Some of the staff feels like they got to be in the newspaper, let's say, for instance, or billboards or what have you, but there's really no threat of them stopping using those sources, no matter if it's attributed or not. Assuming that you're actually going to do something with what you're able to measure, then it totally makes sense. Having been in this business for, pushing 20 years now, we're not really good at measuring much of anything anyway. So I don't know if measuring ad spend is that important when you're sort of carpet bombing areas that never convert with your advertising, and that happens all the time everywhere. There's so many bigger fish to fry inside the dealership. The way I sort of look at this is it's basically like training for a marathon while running around the block, smoking a cigarette and eating a double cheeseburger.
That was my first marathon.
Moderation, moderation, my friend.
And one thing I didn't touch on, which I meant to, is the fact that, at some point in the year, I have to go to my bosses, right, the people that actually write checks, and ask them for an allotment of money. And I need to base that allotment of money off of results, like some type of results. I can't just say, well, I think 10% of the walk-in traffic should also be included into my budget because Cars.com or Clairvoy or somebody else says so. You know what I mean? I actually have to have like numbers that make sense to say, here's the results for the amount of money that we spent. Here's what I can expect if I get this much more money.
But are those numbers actionable? And I think that's what it comes down to, is I think a lot of people at the dealer level, even if they're using a third-party service, they're paying a premium to actually measure this stuff. When it goes to the decision maker, it doesn't really make a difference.
So the answer to the question of why we
only if you can explain it.
That's optimistic.
So far nobody's been able to explain it, right? Because everybody's like, well, if this happens with that, and then somebody else comes in over here, possibly, and then that's been the whole story of this whole thing. And that's why I call BS on this stuff.
I guess for me, listening to you, Chris, when you were explaining that everything was revolving around getting more people to your website.
That was an example.
That was okay. Because I think a website is a part of a dealership's digital marketing.
If the goal is to get people to my website with this amount of money that I'm spending.
Okay.
Right.
Because I think the goal of all dealership marketing is selling cars.
Not getting you to the website.
No. You can't.
That's a means to an end.
Blah, blah, blah. You can't just say sell cars and then just stamp it and then send it off like, oh, we're all here to sell cars. BS. We're here. Yes. To a degree, but that is so far removed from what we're talking about right now, like in my opinion.
Okay. And I believe if you can figure out what is influencing consumers to buy a car from a marketing standpoint, that's the Holy Grail. And the closer you can come to that, the better off you are.
Yeah, absolutely. But to say that we're not there.
We're not.
It's like trying to tell somebody how a cloud feels.
We may not be 100% there, but I think last click is so far away from
There is one company in this space that's doing something about, multi-touch ad. One company that's doing something, and we talk a little bit about them, and who knows, like really how the sausage is made over there. They could just be like, they could just have a spreadsheet. Who knows? Like none of us know because it's proprietary and it's, fancy guys doing fancy things.
I think there's more than just the one company. I believe Clairvoy is probably the most prevalent. So there's transparency. They do a little something different, but very similar. And I think there's more and more players joining the party in other verticals that aren't quite as complicated as the auto shopping process. There's a number of players. I think with most other verticals, they're already using advanced attribution.
Oh, totally. I definitely have seen stuff outside of automotive that's, it's years ahead of what we see in automotive. But again, it sort of begs the question, like now we know, what do we do with it? And I think that's what we still have to ask this stuff. Like you get I love dashboards because everybody offers a dashboard. What does that pie chart really do for the dealership? And I think that's what we have to ask ourselves. Like, yeah, it's great to know this stuff, but are we actually going to cut spending in certain areas? Are we going
that's what I haven't seen.
Cut some zip codes out of the equation? Are we going to cut some IP addresses out of the equation? How does it help the process? And it doesn't address any of those things. If you have a terrible process, what's it matter if you have great advertising channel management? Bring more customers in who are better qualified just so you can kick them out because you're busy.
I wrote a blog post about a year ago, I believe. The sock were being beaten by socks, and that was up on DealerRefresh.
Yeah.
The example was Smartwool, the sock manufacturer.
Smartwool, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to figure out that some of their investments in marketing resulted in many more socks being sold than other investments, but it was so far away from the last click. It was figuring out where the influence came from.
It's easier.
They're selling socks. They're selling $10 socks.
And what they had to figure out, what they figured out is who they need to sell their socks to and where to put their socks in front.
Well,
I think that's what you drew in that article.
Not so much who, but what sites are influencing those buyers.
Sure. I totally understand it, but here's the difference is that I don't know where Smartwool is buying their billboards or where they have their actual physical retail store and they have to start counting, how many people actually walk in and buy socks versus how many people are on the website. The difference between them and us is that they're an e-commerce store, right? So the end of the transaction happens when somebody puts in their credit card information and hits order, right?
Well, no, that's I think that's where they're so analogous to car sales. They're a manufacturer. Most of their socks are sold either on third-party e-commerce websites or in stores. So, it's not their website. It's not trackable back to their sales platform.
Guys, I'm going to interject here because I'm going to go back to the initial debate. The initial question, at least for this context, is last touch attribution still more reliable than multi-touch? Now, Chris states for him, it provides more black and white information. That's what Steve Stauning said. You have a different challenge, Chris and Jeff, and I haven't heard from Jeff on this, but you guys need to know where to attribute your ad dollars, correct? That's what you need to know this for. Third-party aggregators, I'll use cars.com as the example, and I don't want to speak for you, Ed, but cars.com needs to know why they should get your ad dollars. Is that fair? They need to know how they're performing in their minds so that they can get you, so that you're investing into it.
I'll speak from my experience as a cars.com rep. I'm not speaking on behalf of cars.com, but if I can present my dealers with a clearer idea of the influence that we're helping them attain in the marketplace, it really helps justify the spend on cars.com. Absolutely. But it's all about influence, and it's not 100% about the lead. It's about the lead is the tip of the iceberg. I want to look at the big picture. So it's all the stuff under the surface of the water is probably more important.
Now, Chris's argument, and this came up a couple weeks ago, which I thought really put it in perspective. You said you're paying a flat fee to your third-party providers, but what you get from them can vary from day to day and week to week and month to month. But you're paying the same fee. So your question is, what am I actually paying for? Whereas with Google, you're basically buying click traffic and you can throttle it and you get what you pay for. And so it's easy to attribute those dollars.
My point is that I signed a contract, every year to say, I have this many cars that I would like to place on your listing site, please, on your third party site, right? Your marketplace, let's say. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I pay for, right? Is to place those cars there. And then, so I'm asking when somebody's telling me, well, no, you're actually buying audience, or you're buying this, or you're buying that. And it's like, well, okay, what am I actually buying then? Because I was thinking that I was buying listings on a site with my inventory. But apparently that's not what I'm buying.
Well, yes, that's part of it. So you're telling me that you're buying a platform, but I'm also saying, hey, yes, you're buying a platform, but you're also buying audience. Without the audience, the platform is worth.
All right. Can I interject real quick though? Because I think we got to also take into the equation that cars.com, they have no control what's listed. They are a platform. So even if Chris has all of his cars on cars.com doesn't manage the merchandising. They don't manage the pricing, which is a big part of it. They can give you tips and stuff. They got the good value things, which are really cool. I'm glad those are being added. But in general, just because they're the channel and maybe because they get the last click of attribution doesn't mean that the dealership had the other stuff done right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to take the process in the equation. I'm not saying this to be self-serving at all. I'm just saying, like, if you have the most expensive car on cars.com, you're probably not going to get the sale unless it's some kind of weird unicorn, purple and pink polka dotted car like Kirshner would buy. That's, so we have to take those other variables in the equation. We're looking at this in like a far too simple manner. There's so many other variables involved here that can lead to the value of what the attribution really means.
Jeff,
I disagree.
Jeff, do you feel like you know what you get from, I don't want to, it's so hard to say third-party providers because as we're talking about, there's lead brokers like Auto by Tel, which is pretty much consolidated that industry. I would, TrueCar has its own model, which definitely is like, hey, we get credit for everyone that buys a car that, breathed on us. But then if you take AutoTrader, Cars.com, and Edmunds, they're creating more of an ecosystem, if you will, that influences in some way. So Jeff, do you feel like there's just too many gray areas of what you're getting from these partners of yours?
I wouldn't say gray areas. It's just, there's definitely a lot of variables involved. And within those variables, there's, each one has maybe a higher level of influence on whether the customer contacts us or not. So,
and how important is it to know what that influence is? Do you need that influence measured in a clear way?
I need to have it measured. I mean, I at least need to know. I need to know my clientele, and at the end of the day, that's my job. I need to know who our clients are, what influences them, where do I need to be, whether it's online, offline, where do I need to be in order to have that influence? I spoke to Ed earlier, and I'm like, if I've got a customer that's 3 hours away and they contacted us from cars.com, how else do I measure that attribution? To me, that was the last click. I mean, we meet the sale.
Right.
I congratulate my salesperson and what we did at the dealership in order to get the customer into the car. But, I'm going to give full credit to cars.com. Could they avoid stuff and maybe looked at our reputation before driving 3 hours? Absolutely. But I had to make sure that we're progressive with our reviews. We've got our reviews in the right places.
Now, Jeff, let me ask you a question. So if a customer has spent, a half hour, 45 minutes looking at that car on cars.com, spent, really devoted some time.
How would we know that? How would we ever know that?
Okay.
Who knows?
I think that brings
hold on, Chris.
I think that brings up a good point.
So this customer spent all this time looking at cars.com. Cars.com did its job. They clicked over to your dealer website, and then they picked up the phone and called, and they drove the 3 hours. Who gets the credit? Is that cars.com or is it your dealer website? Because they phoned from your dealer website.
So,
okay, thank you. But
can I ask a question?
I'm going to give cars.com the credit, not my website. I mean, I've already got my website. Like, how much value? I mean, obviously, our website has a tremendous amount of value, but they wouldn't have gotten to my website without cars.com. And again, this is one example. This could be completely different for someone that's shopping for a new car and lives 10 minutes from the dealership.
Mm-hmm.
I ask a question to the customers dealers real quick. Can I ask a question for the two dealer employees really quick though? So let's imagine a future where we have multiple companies who are able to really pinpoint the attribution. So what happens in that future then? Let's say that cars.com may have had the primary attribution, last click attribution. But what if AutoTrader then comes knocking on the door and say, hey, we were 20% responsible for this. And then what if Car Gurus comes and said, hey, we were like 13% responsible.
That's where the breakdown's going to happen, because as soon as a company like Clairvoy or Transparency AI starts coming out with reports that negatively impact a Cars.com or a Car Guru's business, then it's going to be like neighborhood stick fights. You know what I mean? They're just going to be discounting the value of those things.
So I want to throw this out there because
here, hold on. I want to make one more point, Ryan, and it's to what you were saying, Ed. Until we will never know, even if a shopper that clicked on the website was actually looking at any of our cars, before then, or if they were looking at competitor cars and then maybe they went to the dealer page, dealer search page or something like that on cars.com. We don't have any insight as far as the intent goes in any sort of attribution model that anybody provides. as to what they were doing on the website that was not ours. Right. So who knows what they were doing on cars.com? Maybe they found it on a, like I said, on a, search dealers in this zip code. And then we were in a listing and they clicked on it. We don't know any of that stuff as dealers. You see what I'm saying? Like, we have no idea what the intent is from anywhere else.
Right. So
nobody's providing that information to us to make these decisions any better.
Yes, that leads to what's missing in all of this. And what's missing is not that somebody came from somewhere, because the reality is that person most likely came from multiple different sources. What's missing here is what you don't know about that person, where they were, why they were there, what their intent is. I was having a conversation today with a colleague. What we were talking about is dealers need more information than just name and phone number and what VIN they were looking at. You need to know what their intent was, what it is that they're after. And that's something I don't think dealers get from any providers.
Actually, they do. If a dealer is using their OEMs working with, there's a couple of different companies that give lead scoring information, but I'm for certain that if they're working for, Jeff, help me out. I know through Mercedes, I think Volkswagen, they use Urban Science. That's what I was thinking. I'm sorry. But Urban Science does give some cursory data in the comments. They don't give intent to purchase, but they can give you some basic.
You get scored, right? That's your.
No, it's not necessarily scored. I mean, the OEM lead will come with.
was doing that too.
They'll give you some basic demographic data, like this is the average age of the zip code, this is their average income range.
Well, due to privacy laws, there's a lot of things that you can't divulge.
Right.
But what they do is they sort of put people in a bucket and they say this customer potentially, does this, and this, shops here, here, and here, and subscribes to these 3 magazines or something like that. So.
Right. So you can't append data to do that. I mean, like I said, my previous employer, I mean, we did a pretty good job of that. But like I said, that's an extra service, an extra layer that dealerships would have to use. So you can get some better ideas. That is,
dealerships don't use it.
People don't use it exactly. A lot of my stores, I have to point it out to. I'll be in their CRM, like, hey, you see this in the comments here? Like, what's that mean? I'm like, you've never noticed that before? No. So nobody gets educated on what that means. Nobody gets trained on what that means. None of the OEM reps.
Well, even when they do, they still don't use it most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, going back to Chris's point earlier, I know my company has placed a Clairvoy pixel everywhere. So Clairvoy is tracking a tremendous amount of data. So they actually know what pages are being looked at, all of that sort of data. And I would encourage every other third-party website to share that sort of data. I don't think it makes sense to share that data on an individual dealer basis because there's so many dealers in the world. But if we can work with the big attribution companies, and I would encourage more attribution companies to join the party. I think my company at least has been very open about sharing data with as many players.
Are you releasing information that you're finding?
I think there was there was
beneficial.
Well.
It makes us look
any time that we sign up a dealer with Clairvoy, and we do sponsor a 2-month, I believe, trial with Clairvoy, and then after that, the dealer's on the hook for the whatever the fee is. We're always taking a gamble. If we run
taking a gamble. Come on, you're paying the company to do this, to do the reporting.
But if we run a transparency study, if we run a transparency study, we don't know what the results are going to be. In many cases, they're beneficial.
Well, in aggregate, there is good data there. In aggregate, I mean, if you look at things across the board with huge sample sets they're getting, I mean, you will get some value out of it. I mean, is it going to be good for everybody? No, but I mean, in Ed's defense, like, at least they're taking steps to go that direction, and I want to say, like, right now, there's a balance of time. I appreciate Ed. I mean, he's been taking a beating. It's not all directed towards cars.com. I mean, he just happens to be here.
I know Chris is kind of a naysayer, and that's okay. I mean, I love the guy, but he's kind of a naysayer.
Let me ask a question.
That's his job.
All I'm saying is that I've got real dollars I'm trying to spend over here, and everybody's just trying to sell me wishes and dreams.
Well, okay, so we know.
I want to sell you audience.
You guys, specific to cars.com, they're offering a framework they're offering a framework of attribution, which I would say is a step in the right direction. Who else is doing that? Bill, does AutoTrader offer a framework?
They're still using like CPM metrics for billboards and stuff like that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they definitely are at the forefront of making effort to be transparent. You know, my stance is pretty clear. I mean, if you have a 4% closing ratio, last click attribution, that's the least thing you should be worried about. But I think in general, I mean, if you're like one of the tip of the spear bleeding edge dealers, I'm sure, like, I know Chris has got his stuff on lockdown. I mean, for a dealership like his, like, he could find some value in that.
Then
sure.
Jeff, are you benefiting from that framework that they offer?
I'm not using it, no.
And Chris, are you?
What framework are we talking about?
Well, Clairvoy or Cars.com, if they're the only ones that are providing a framework of attribution,
We use Cars.com for sure.
are you benefiting from that? Is it helping you?
Sorry, I'm going to sound dumb. I don't understand the question.
Well, if they're offering a framework of attribution, right, to provide more, so you don't really even know what the framework is. So,
No.
Ed, maybe it's too much. I mean, is that not being presented? It is being presented to dealers, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, certainly on our blog, on Clairvoy's blog, you know, I've made it clear. I think if you look at DealerRefresh, I think it's been on DealerRefresh.
So hold on. I think I understand. I think I know what you're talking about. The framework is, it's a loose framework, but it's basically saying like there might be some stuff here.
Well, no, they broke it into three.
We're sharing data. We're sharing with data with Clairvoy. If you chose to participate with Clairvoy,
Which you didn't, right, Chris? You chose not to because of
I'm doing the free program.
You are.
okay.
Yeah, but all that is like custom audience groupings inside of Google Analytics under the free program.
Yeah, but they're also, I think, you know, they're going beyond the four that come stock with Google, and
that's what it is. Yeah, it's audience groupings. Yeah, so you can go down and dig in and say, you know, here's all the car guru, you know, referral traffic, but it's still just referral traffic to the site, and then whatever happens there.
Well,
you know.
what I was speaking to specifically is the Cars.com framework is focused on three things, and that's website traffic, showroom traffic, and then transactional information. So, you know,
transactional meaning like sales.
Yeah, like if there's sales that you can attribute in some percentage, you know, of influence to that source, to Cars.com, then there's like a weight. There's a weight to it.
It always reminds me of like in movies, you know, when a guy is going to pick up a girl on a date and like walks by the neighbor's house and the neighbor's got a bunch of flowers growing outside, and he just like grabs a handful of flowers and rips them out of the ground to take to the girl, and it's like, look at all these flowers I got you. That's kind of like what this conversation reminds me of.
Well, that guy's going.
Well
places.
said.
All right, we're out of time, you guys. But hey, as we expected, I mean, last word here: last touch versus multi-touch. Chris, I don't think your opinions changed. You're still going to look at last touch to attribute your ad dollars
for now. But I'm open to options. I just want to see them. I want to see them in practice because everybody talks about it, and we've got 1 or 2 case studies that are just, you know, highlighting one vendor partner, and there's just not enough information out there yet to make like me to go to my bosses and ask for more money based off of these numbers.
Yeah, and Jeff, what's your final word on that?
I mean, I just recommend looking at each individual. There's a lot of variables involved, and
so that'd be the custom model, as we
yeah, pretty much
custom model.
That's called the gut feel model.
Yeah, well, no, no, definitely not the gut feel model. Just
I kid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey guys, always great to be here. See you again. Bill, thanks for coming in. DealerRefresh Roundtable. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we're going to call this a wrap, and we'll see you on the next go round.
Fuel your growth with the new 4 Ps of automotive marketing: product, price, place, and now person. Creating connections that empower consumers and fuel your sales. That's the new 4 Ps of automotive marketing. That's Cars.com, your partner in growth.